Hello again, this is Dr. Jimmy. This is my second video about Michael Myers in my Horror Nights Who's Who series, giving a little more background into the masked man that you might not know about. And even if you do, it'll be an interesting take on it, because I'm not anywhere near done. The first video I talked about the plots and how Michael's character was utilized in all the different movies from the first Halloween in 1978 to the rather silly, I think, 7th film in the series, which was called Halloween H2O. Well, it was only the 6th one that had Michael Myers in it, because Part 3 didn't, if that's right. I think so. It was, yeah, I think 4, 5, 6, yeah, that's right. So, Halloween H2O, right? So, which was, I believe, the 7th film in the Halloween franchise, even though it was only the 6th one to feature Michael Myers. So, it ended with him being decapitated by his sister Laurie Strode all these years, 20 years after the events that occurred in the first Halloween. Except, he's not dead. And a few years later, and this is the only one of these to have been made in the 21st century, they came up with a really awful movie called Halloween Resurrection. I think it came out in 2001. And even though Rick Rosenthal, who made Halloween 2, came back to do this movie, compared to Halloween 2, compared to this movie, Halloween 2 is like a work of sheer genius. This was really the worst of it. It was so camp. They tried to make it all laugh. The idea was, oh, they're doing a reality show in Haddonfield, and they're going to use the Myers house, and it's all just so silly, using some Blair Witchy ideas, but the whole idea of reality programs like Big Brother and other ghost hunters, that kind of crap with little handheld night glass, all that kind of stuff, it's just stupid shit. Of course, Michael Myers shows up and starts killing a lot of them because they deserve it, the dumbasses. And it's really not barely watchable. There's a couple of neat things. Tommy Doyle, the little boy that was the was the actual kid being babysat by Laurie Strode all those years ago. Tommy Doyle comes back and he's an adult and he's been freaking obsessed with Michael Myers all this time. He's out of his freaking mind. So that's kind of interesting. His whole life has been ruined because of what happened on Halloween all those years, and he's trying to... Dr. Loomis isn't around, of course, because Donald Pleasant's been dead for a while. So, we've got, you know, it's really not all that great. And really pathetic. At the end, Busta Rhymes kicks Michael Myers' ass. I'm sorry. Busta Rhymes could not kick the real Michael Myers' ass. Couldn't happen. Sorry. No, couldn't happen. You know, if LL Cool J couldn't do it in H2O, how the hell could Busta Rhymes do it in this movie? Sorry, not going to happen. I don't think so. It's just... It's the dumbass ending. And of course he isn't dead, even after he's supposed to be dead. He pops up again. As usual, it doesn't do much for the entire franchise. But that wasn't the end of Halloween movies, because in 2007 they resurrected it again, and Rob Zombie was behind that, to remake Halloween. And so the new version of Michael Myers, now it's set in the 70s to begin with, and you have Michael as a little snotty kid, and he's clearly already fucked up. Because he has all the danger signs of being a serial killer, a sociopathic serial killer. He likes to set fires, he likes to torture animals. I don't know if he's a bedwetter, probably. And eventually he kills some little boys that were picking on him. And yeah, they might have deserved it because they were fucking bullies, but at the same time, he gets really brutal and violent. This is a Rob Zombie movie. They don't flinch on the gore, especially if you watch the unrated versions. It's extremely brutal, and we already have the baby sister. And not only the older sister, the baby sister is there in the cradle, so we know that she's there. She's got a different name than Laurie, of course, but that's going to become Laurie Strode, and we know that already. So we have this situation. We have Sherry Moon playing Deborah Myers, and in this one apparently there's it's a dysfunctional family. The husband is, I don't remember if she was a widow or just separated from her husband. She's a single mother now. So it's not like the Myers had a really nice little neat unit of a family. It's kind of messed up already, and so there's all kinds of serious problems that are there. And what happens is there's a stepfather figure who's a complete asshole, and so little Michael ends up killing him too after he kills the sister. And he puts on a mask that's very familiar to us all, the shape mask, and it's all grotty. And then of course he gets taken to the asylum, doesn't speak for 15 years, but he speaks a little bit at first. He talks a bit to Dr. Loomis, played by Malcolm McDowell now, remember from A Clockwork Orange. So they have some conversation before he stops talking. When he stops talking, that's it. He starts making masks, all the time making masks in hospital. Just making all these masks and masks and masks. One version, because there's multiple versions of this film because of some unedited director's cut. One version he gets involved in a rape scene where he sees an orderly raping another patient that sets him off after all these years of solitude and quiet. Another something else in another version of the film, that's not it. But he comes back, it's a little bit more involved than the way he came back for no reason in the original film, and goes on his rampage to Haddonfield looking for his sister, who of course is now a teenager and played by an actress who actually looks like a teenager. I think her name was Scout or something. And then what happens is similar to the original movie, but a little bit more violent. He kills off the friends, tries to kill her off, she escapes, tracks her down. Eventually Dr. Loomis shows up, but in this version it is Laurie who takes the gun and shoots Michael in the head, and apparently actually kills him. That's what's implied. Then they make Halloween 2 a couple of years later, Rob Zombie does, and this one starts out almost like a remake of Halloween 2, because she's in hospital, Michael's still after her, and all of these things happen, and suddenly all of that's a dream. She wakes up, and Michael never showed up in the hospital when she was there. He was apparently either dead or disappeared, and all these years later she's living with other people and she's quite happy. But then Michael does suddenly show up, and there's all kinds of visions and psychic stuff in this movie. So Zombie started veering off into the supernatural. Visions of white horses, of their dead mother, communicating with both Laurie and Michael through their dreams, and they have the same hallucinations, so obviously there's a real ghost psychic connection, something going on. And eventually, after all goes down, Michael is Dr. Loomis is killed, and then Michael is killed after he is impaled on some sharp pointy things. He's not dead yet. Laurie goes over, says she loves her brother, and then stabs him to death. And then after that, she's fucking crazy. Now she's in the asylum and she's seeing her dead mother and white horses and things, and it looks like she's going to be the one to carry on the family tradition. So it kind of follows in the footsteps of that one movie, I think it was part 4, where little Jamie, Michael's niece, looks like she's going crazy at the end of that one. Zombie's never gone back to make a Halloween 3, probably never will be, especially because John Carpenter plans to produce the next Halloween movie, a remake, reboot, another retcon, another version, another rebooting, requel, whatever you want to call it, coming out next year, I believe. So there'll be a new version of Halloween coming to a cinema near you. So that takes care of all the movie versions of Michael Myers, and we see that it has occasionally veered off into wild supernatural and touch on Celtic mythology just a bit, although they don't really do it very accurately. But what is the Bogeyman? Because that's a question from the very first film. What's that all about? And I think that's essential to who Michael Myers is from the very first film. The Boogeyman is a universal archetype. We find Boogeyman figures all around the world, from Antarctica, well no, not Antarctica, penguins tell their children be good, or the boogie killer whale will come and get you. From South America to China to Asia to Africa, all around the world, in India and Europe, all everywhere, there are stories of some sort of monstrous thing that will threaten children specifically. Very often they have similar names. Balao, Babak. One name that's quite interesting, it shows up in Celtic mythology, is Coco, or Kakoi, or but Coco is the original name. It started out in Spain and Portugal, back when it was still Celtic. At one time, the Celts lived there. There's only a remnant of Celtic civilization in Galicia now, but there was originally, the Romans then came in, and then the Visigoths came in, took it from the Romans, and then eventually the Visigoths turned into what became Spanish and Portuguese people, but they had a lot of course there was a strong Moorish incursion at that, so it's gone through a lot of changes, and the modern Spaniard could have Moor, Visigoth, Roman and Celtic bloodlines all going through back in there, and they wouldn't even know where it all came from or care about it. But Celtic traditions did exist in Spain before Americans started popularizing Halloween, and they had a boogeyman with a pumpkin head, and they carved, as soon as pumpkins were introduced, they became the way they carved pumpkins, and they had Halloween. When I was in Portugal that day, remember I said, the last night of Halloween Horror Nights 23, in another video I mentioned I was in Portugal, in Lisbon. It was Halloween night, and I'm in Portugal, and I see trick-or-treaters running around. And they said, that's a Portuguese thing. They did that before they did it in Europe. In Ireland or in America. I don't know if that's true or not, but there have been Spanish traditions that have existed for a long time. So they have, strangely enough. The word Coco goes back to a Celtic word for the skull. And original jack-o'-lanterns were not carved out of a turnip or a pumpkin or anything like that. It was a human skull from someone you killed in battle, but you don't want his ghost to come after you, so you put a torch or a candle inside the skull to ward off his ghost or any other spirits on the Day of the Dead, which is of course October 31st, Samhain. And that's where that originally came from. And Kakoi is a sort of a skull head type of raw, the idea of the raw head who had no skin on his head, he had a skull for a head. There's all sorts of boogeymen of that kind have floated around, raw head and bloody bones. Lots of creepy creatures throughout all sorts of traditions. It's also related in a weird way to La Llorona, or Krampus, we've seen at Horror Nights, or will see at Horror Nights, who also are boogeyman characters because they're used by parents to scare the fuck out of their children to make them good. Oh, if you're not good, the boogeyman will come and get you. This is also a universal thing. It's very weird. All over the world people have, and I don't mean Universal Studios, I mean, all over the world, in all cultures, in all times, there have been people warning their kids because some sort of beast will come for them in the night if they're not good. It makes you wonder. Usually when there's that kind of legend, there's some truth behind it, and you wonder about movies like Sinister and some others. Is there something, Insidious, all these other movies, you often have this thing that preys on the little kids, some demonic entity. It kind of creeps you out. Makes me glad I'm old. You never hear about the beast that comes for them old middle-aged fuck. No, it's always some little brat. Sorry, kiddies, you're the ones who have to look out for the boogeyman. I just have to look out for heart disease and cancer and morbid obesity and diabetes and all sorts of things that might happen to me. Oh, those are scarier monsters. Much scarier. I think I'd rather have the boogeyman. So that ties into it. Michael Myers represents this boogeyman figure. And what is the boogeyman? Because it's whatever you want it to be. Some places it's a spidery thing. Sometimes it's some sort of demon or hobgoblin. But what's best is when you really aren't certain. It's sort of a shape. And so just this figure in its garage mechanics outfit with the strange pale white face and bushy hair that looks like Captain Kirk on a bad day. That strange sort of pale, emotionless look that you can read anything into. That's why it's so frightening, because we have our imagination at play. What is behind that mask? What is really behind that mask? What's going on in that strange... What's going on behind the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes? We have no clue. Sorry, Rob Zombie. Sorry, all the others who've tried to tell us, tried to fill in the gaps with silly things. The fact is, we don't know what's going on behind those blackest devil's eyes. We don't know. Doesn't it remind you of the way that that Quint described the shark in Jaws? He had that doll's eyes, devil's eyes. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Is Michael Myers related to the shark from Jaws? No, let's not go there. That's silly. And yet there's a weird playfulness about him as well. I mean, you think he's just this killing machine, but he'll take his victim and put him on the bed and put her sister's tombstone in a lit jack-o'-lantern next to it. You know, he'll playfully hide the bodies around the house so that they can be found later on when you open a closet, and here comes one falling out at you, hanging upside down. Isn't that clever? You know, and the way he looked at the guy when he stabbed him and impaled him, so he's hanging in the kitchen, and he just sort of looks at him with his head turned, like, oh, interesting, how peculiar. There's something that remains childlike about Michael even as an adult. So there's a weird sort of playfulness, at least in that first movie. Disappeared very quickly after that, especially in zombies films. Even the kid Michael Myers in the zombie versions is not kid-like or playful. He's more the opposite from the get-go, except for making all those masks, which is weird. So, who is Michael Myers? I think he's us. And we tend to project onto that blank white mask all of the evil that is within us. And there's all sorts of evil inside of all of us, which we don't want to admit, even to ourselves. Where do you think your nightmares come from? Somewhere deep within. As a wise man once said, I think his name was... oh dear, I don't remember. It was Chinese, and he's somebody's neighbor. Yes, a Chinese laundry over on Delancey Street, and a fortune cookie. It wisely read, "Beware the evil within." Yes, so, and there's something to that. Yes, beware the evil within. I think that comes from either Rick Spencer or T.J. Mannarino. But either case, there's truth to that. Because what the real evil, the real darkness, is buried within the heart of all of us. And we always try to pretend it's so bright and happy and fluffy bunnies in here. But when you really get deep in here, sometimes there's screaming monkeys with sharp-pointed teeth, thirsting for each other's blood. We want to forget about that if we can. We want to forget the darkness within. So next time I do a Who's Who video, it'll be about another version of a boogeyman and another character associated with a holiday. Someone that we warn our children to be good or to be visited by. That jolly old elf called Krampus. But that's the next Who's Who video. Till then, enjoy any holiday you happen to find yourself in. And don't forget, as of today, it's only 6 nights to horror nights! Happy dance, happy dance, happy dance.